Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 188 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. Since we're continuing the deep dive from last episode, and we have nearly an hour and a half of discussion, I'll keep the intro short. Although it is time to shout out my patrons. As always, my sincere thanks go out to Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lily and Sam Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. Remember, it's just $1 per month to get this monthly shoutout and extra audio content, including an uncut version of these deep dives, which can include an hour or more of additional conversation. You can also read the full scripts of every written episode. Just go to patreon.com/welcome to Geektown and give it a free week to see if you think it's worth it. Anyways, let's get into the show proper, starting off with Joel's response to my statement about how many notes we both had.
There were many notes to take. This was a dense episode. There was a lot in it, especially for an episode where not a huge amount happened.
It was not huge on plot, but there was definitely stuff to talk about here.
Yeah.
And also, it was, one of my first notes is that it was shorter than the previous two episodes. It was only 38 minutes.
Wow. I did not notice
including
that. Yeah.
Credits and all of that.
Yeah, they packed a lot in.
Yes. Well, shall we get to it then?
Sure, but before we get too deep, I want to point out a comment that I received from your musician and my brother, Aaron L., who listened to our previous episode and said, "You guys are both going under an assumption that we don't necessarily have any evidence for," which is Agatha's telling the truth. She has been here before.
I was going to bring that up with this episode. Yeah, she says she's been here before. Everyone assumes that she is telling the truth when she says, "I've been down the road."
But every time she's asked a direct question, she hems and haws.
Yeah, especially this episode.
Yeah,
I definitely was going to bring that up. I do have that in my notes and was like, hey, wait a minute. So yeah, good call, Aaron. As always, thank you for the input. If anybody else wants to share their thoughts, please email them to welcometogeektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. On that note, let's get to... They call it Season 1, Episode 3, but, you know, it's probably just Episode 3.
Right.
Which is Through Many Miles of Tricks and Trials.
Now, they are bouncing around the lyrics of the ballad a little bit. They started off with the first line, "Seekest thou the road?" Then they went to the last couplet of the first chorus, "Circle sown with fate, unlock thy hidden gate," and then they jump down to the middle of the last verse for this one. I don't have any conclusions with that, but I did note it.
Yeah, I think they're just picking the lyrics that fit best with what is happening in the episode. Rather than make the song match the order of the episodes, they chose bits from the song to match the current episode.
Agreed, and that's actually what I wanted to point out, is a lot of times writers will If they're going to mold the story to the lyrics of a song, they're going to follow the song in order. They're cueing the audience that that's not what's going to happen.
Right. Although I have thoughts about the song and things that will come up because of what the song says.
Indeed.
But in order to get there, we need to get to the actual episode itself. And before we get there, we actually get the previously on, which is always my favorite montage of assembling the team. They just do a quick, here's Agatha, here's the teen. Hey, I need a divination witch. Hey, I need a potions guy. Hey, I need a protection witch. Hey, I need a green witch. Sure, let's grab Sharon. So I thought that was a really well put together montage because, as I said, I love the assembling the team stuff.
Coven, assemble!
And the last bit of... Was it the last bit of the previously on, or was it the first bit of the show? Teen says, it's exactly how I pictured it.
That's early in the show, yeah.
Okay. And Teen was the first one down the stairs. Agatha responds, yes, it suits you. If it's exactly how he pictured it, did the road react to his presence?
That's very possible, yeah. Although there are several lines in the song that kind of, I mean, it's how I would have pictured it based on the song also.
True. And it's a witch's road. You're going to picture either Yellow Brick Road from Wizard of Oz, or...
That's a very specific witch's road.
Yes, exactly. Or you're going to be in
a mysterious
creepy
forest,
Halloween forest.
Dark nighttime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is a fairly stereotypical image so far, but I did want to point that out.
Absolutely. And
another line that the teen gets that I think is interesting is anyone can be a witch with proper training.
Which he does bring up later when he talks about manual magic. Well, not much later, but yeah.
Which is one of the reasons that Wanda was so special. Because
she didn't require the training.
Exactly. That conversation happens while, because Jennifer is complaining about Teen and Sharon being there. Sharon having no obvious magical qualities whatsoever.
And not only those, but she herself is bound. Agatha has had her powers removed. There is only one of the party that actually has power right now, and it's not an obviously useful one.
That is definitely true. And they ask, how are we going to do this? And that's when, as you pointed out, the teen is like, well, the manual way, the hard way, witchcraft, emphasis on the craft.
Yeah, labor-intensive manual acts of magic. Now, before we even get there, I had a thought. The second time I viewed this episode, I was like, there are way too many references to the song for me not to have the lyrics in front of me. So I pulled them up. And as I was reading them, the thought that occurred to me is, wait a minute, there's a couplet in there. Primal night giveth sight, familiar by thy side. Where's Senor Scratchy? Oh, Teen left him upstairs in the house. They don't have any familiars with them.
That's true. I had read that line and was like, none of them have a familiar, and for some reason I forgot about Senor Scratchy entirely, which is weird because we get a lot of references to Nicholas Scratch this episode.
Oh, yes. They're hinting very, very heavily.
Oh, so much so, which is going to be very funny because right now, if you look at the Marvel.fandom page, it goes through the list, the cast, and it's like Catherine Hahn as Agatha Harkness, Aubrey Plaza as Rio Vidal, and Joe Locke as Billy Kaplan. It doesn't, they just assumed and were like, we know this has got to be it. who he is playing. And I'm like, I don't think so anymore, guys. There was so much assumption on this, and I can't find anywhere that Marvel said that's who he is playing officially. And so I think everyone went in one direction, and having watched these episodes, I'm like, no.
Well, but at the same time, they have shown us that they are perfectly willing to subvert expectations.
Fair enough. We'll see. But the other thing I was thinking, and this was just literally one of those shower thoughts, is you can't have an entire Billy show and not have Tommy show up.
Well, there are more episodes.
There are more episodes, but Tommy wouldn't fit in this story.
Probably true, but not necessarily. I mean, we don't know. They're all facing challenges, and so far, Teen hasn't.
True. Speaking of those challenges, earlier before the whole manual acts of magic stuff, we get that first big hint that Agatha did not necessarily go down the road before.
No, she pauses very significantly when she's asked directly what to expect, and
then gives a super vague answer.
Right. And that pause, was she trying to customize her answer for her audience, or was she trying to build an answer for her audience?
Yeah. And she's just literally taking bits from the song and answering with that.
Mm-hmm.
So she says the road will test us and our knowledge of the craft, one trial for each skill. But yeah, I could have come up with that answer.
Right.
So, Aaron, I think you're right on this one. I came to the same conclusion based on the evidence that we're getting in this episode. And then, something I didn't think was going to happen this early is Teen reveals his sigil.
Yeah. Now, this time I did manage to remember to pause on the sigil and take a very close look at it. And I disagree with those online people that say it looks like an M. I think it just looks like a Madokan from Oddworld. His mouth is sewn shut. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, no, that's what it looks like to me as well. I had not heard the M before.
I thought you had been the one who expressed that to me. No, they were saying that it looks like an M, like potentially for Mephisto, as I was pronouncing it prior to this episode.
As was I.
Well, you're the reason I did. I hadn't heard of him before you.
But I guess it makes sense because it is kind of a shortened version of Mephistopheles.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, for some reason I had always pronounced it Mephisto. So pronouncing it Mephisto from now on, I may screw up every now and then, but I will do my best to match the pronunciation of the show.
Right. And we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll definitely get there. But back to the sigil.
Yeah, somebody's put a sigil on that boy, and then man, oh man, is Agatha quick to change the subject.
Well, she immediately says, wasn't me.
Right.
Which could be true, could not be, based on who we think he possibly is.
And she could be aware, or she could not be, based on what we know of of everything.
And I like her answer of, he could be something special, he could be a pest that a cranky witch stashed under a rock. Which reminded me of one of my favorite movies, Stardust. And what happened to the princess in that movie, where she was basically stashed under a rock under a witch's control.
Right. That was a fun movie.
Oh, I love that movie so much.
So, yes, then as soon as all of that happens and Agatha tries to dismiss the relevance of the sigil, she goes right back to, let's focus on the road, let's focus on the task at hand. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm looking at this and going, does she actually recognize him? She's trying to hide any interest about him from the others.
Right. And she's been doing that from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. This is my pet. Say hello, pet.
Toto. She actually called him Toto when she was introducing herself to Alice, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah.
I don't think she knows. She might suspect, but the way she reacted when the sigil first appeared, and the fact that she had to like test herself in the second episode when they were driving, all of that felt very genuine to me, that she was surprised at this fact.
True, but if the sigil is, as was described in this episode, it's designed to hide him from all witches, that would include whoever cast the sigil.
Potentially. A lot of times in magical stories, spells will leave the caster immune.
And sometimes the caster has to specify that. But yes, if that was the case, I could totally see her using those tests to find out, am I being impacted by this in a specific way? And I am also leaning in your direction where she suspects but doesn't know. But it's also possible she knows.
It's possible, but I don't think we have a lot of evidence pointing that way at this point.
Sure.
And I went back and tried to see, when does Sharon leave?
Yeah, it is not clear, but I love the reveal. If you want this, and you want that, and you...
Where'd you go? Agatha says you take her eyes off her for 2 seconds, and it's almost literal, because when Agatha starts with, so if you want, you can see her in the shot.
Can you?
Yeah.
Jeez.
At the very beginning of that, there is a shot of, the 3 witchy people together, and Sharon is a little off to the side from them, but she is still part of that group. And then it cuts back and forth, and it's like, when did she leave? Where did she go? But she's just trying to find a way out. Just walking down the road.
She already said, this is a kidnapping. Let's call the authorities. Yeah. And, there's no signal. And, that was the first time that I had written poor Sharon.
Yeah, not going to be the last.
No, she says it herself. This is a very, very bad day for her.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but one of the people I follow on YouTube is doing her reactions, and she titled the commentary for this episode, Sharon's No Good, Very Bad, Horrible Day.
Now, we also, when we cut to Sharon right here, we get our first precog payoff. And it's a very, very quick one. But she does say, don't touch me! Just like was said in the previous episode.
Yep. So Sharon decides to sit down on the next to the road.
Well, there was a nice little hill there. It was perfectly set up. Yeah.
I mean, every story with a magical road says in it somewhere, don't get off the road. Well, stay on the road.
Yes, but she isn't fully bought into that's what this is. She's
that's true.
Looking for a cell signal to call the cops, and she was expecting there to be an unfinished railway system downstairs here. All of this stuff, she is not completely sold on the fact that this is what it is.
So, yeah, no, it does make sense, but it is, as soon as she does it, it's a mistake as a viewer.
Oh, yes. And the tree tries to eat her purse, and she says, no, this came from Talbot's, you can't have it.
And no offense to Talbot's, but you're not that nice. It's just, just let the purse go.
It is distinctly middle class, which is what she is. And
oh yeah, no, it totally fits her character.
Yeah. But this was my second poor Sharon moment.
Yeah, because she just gets covered in goop.
Yes.
Just like this black tar
gunk,
yeah.
And when they're trying to pull her out of it, because the rest of the team does find her,
yes, just in time.
Of course, but I love watching Agatha in the background, kind of half-heartedly pretending to try and help. Like, well, you got it, no problem.
You guys got this. It's fine. I'd just be in the way.
Yeah, and
yeah, there's a couple of moments where your theory about Agatha being chaotic good
are tested.
Well, there's some that are borne out, but there are a lot more in this episode that feel like go the other way.
Yeah, I think you may be right on that. I'm coming back towards chaotic neutral.
And, maybe this is a redemption story for her.
Could be.
But I think at this point, she is still more caring about herself than others.
I think that there are several moments in this episode, particularly involving Sharon, that are evidence towards that.
Yeah. But after Sharon gets rescued, we get our first stop on the road.
And they're off to suburbia?
Well, now I think each stop on the road, from what I've read and the little bits I've seen in the trailers and such, is that each stop is going to be a reference, homage, not necessarily like WandaVision was, where it's a complete, like, this is this property.
Well, except this time it very much is.
Oh, okay. I think it is, but it's not as direct. It's not as, like, when you were in WandaVision episode 3, you were like, oh, this is the Brady Bunch house. They are trying as hard as they can to make the set that they have look like the Brady Bunch house.
That's totally fair, and I wish I could comment on how close this is, because they point out a specific property in a minute, but that I have not seen.
Okay. I have seen the property I'm thinking of.
Okay.
And so far neither of us has said the property.
Well, that's because we haven't gotten there. We haven't gotten there. So before we do, they look at the door and they point out this symbol that's showing the phases of the moon, and Teen says it's full, the water phase. And this made me write down so much in this show is specifically designed for your second viewing.
Yes. Water phase, there are two aspects of that I think get called on there. There's the obvious one of the drowning if they are unsuccessful, but also there's 4 types of witch, and one is potions, which are made primarily of water.
Well, the second couplet in the song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gather sisters, fire, water, earth, and air.
Yes. So I would say fire is probably our protection witch. Water is potions. Earth is the green witch. And air would be divination.
Makes sense.
So the foreshadowing and the second viewing reward is very strong on that door.
Absolutely.
And I love how Sharon rings the bell, but Agatha's just like, come on, let's just go in.
I've noted that also. Her expression, Sharon says, well, we don't want to disturb anyone. And Agatha's, don't we?
Come on. Then, definitely chaotic.
Oh, yes. Or I wrote this down later, but throughout the episode, she is showing 2 personas. And one of them is the persona that all of the other witches expect her to be. This chaotic, neutral leaning towards evil, cynical, I'm making snarky comments on everything and just laughing at all of your idiocy. And the other is the black and white Agnes, nosy neighbor, I am just excited about everything. And it's like she's choosing moment to moment who she wants people to see her as. Except for that one moment where she gets her hallucination and responds to it, and then we see a genuine Agatha.
Right. Of course, we'll get there when we get there.
And Sharon wipes her feet on the way in, which is good because they were mucky.
Yeah, but when she's that mucky, wiping your feet isn't actually going to help at all because you're just dripping from everywhere. But fortunately, that doesn't matter because as soon as they walk in the door, their clothes and hair are transformed to...
Real Housewives?
Okay, so is that the property that you were thinking of?
No.
Okay. I'm curious. Let's do this on 3 because we each have a property in mind, but we haven't said it yet to each other.
Okay.
So, 1, 2, 3, practical magic.
Lies. I can see practical magic. That makes sense. But in the background, one of the characters, when they're going through this, they're like, this is a middle-aged second chance at love vibe, definitely a sip your tea with both hands kinds of place. I look like one of my customers. Mrs. Hart, with a be careful what you ask for line, says, bury me in that kitchen. And then someone in the background says, have you seen Huge Tiny Lies? Now, I have not seen Big Little Lies, but that's the problem.
I have not seen Big Little Lies either. I also wasn't aware of Big Little Lies. I thought they were making a Pretty Little Liars reference, but changing it enough to not
hit copyright.
Which
is what they did.
So, yeah, okay. Big Little Lies is a comedy drama series, but it doesn't have anything to do with witches, as far as I can tell.
True, and you're right. They're going to try and lean into that aspect whenever possible, and there are plenty of opportunities.
Yeah. So, with the beach house of it all, and just that very cozy upper class, to me, it felt like practical magic. But
I can totally see
the fact that they call out a specific show does also point to that. Just to point out, there is a connection between those two properties.
Because of course there is.
They both star Nicole Kidman.
That's an interesting thing.
Coincidence.
Sure. We'll go with that. So they find the invitation on the mantle.
Yes. Well, specifically, Teen finds it. He's kind of the instigator here for everything. Mm-hmm. So,
which
I think it makes sense
on
that he's...
with last episode. That was the role then too.
Yeah. Now, the first time you watched the episode, did you come up with the answer to the riddle?
I didn't. I was considering pausing to try and figure it out, but I did not do so. And they give Sharon credit for figuring it out, but I don't think she did. I think she just reacted to the solution.
I think she just saw wine and was like, wine! I need wine!
Oh boy, do I ever.
When I listened to the riddle the first time, which was, my age has value, I'm no fun alone, I mess with your mind, my tricks are well known. My answer was memory.
Yeah, I can see that.
I thought I had come up with a good answer, but no. Turns out it was wine. And since the wine bottle in episode 1 of WandaVision gave us little clues and references, I had to pause on the wine bottle here and translate as much as I could.
You're not alone.
But there's not a lot here.
No, it's very bland, generic wine bottle kind of thing.
Yeah. The only thing that I think was potentially interesting was the fact that it is something for a queen on the bottom. I couldn't read the first word, but the very bottom of the bottle said something for a queen in Spanish, and then product of Spain.
Endotellado. Yeah, you're right. That Google Translate failed me. It didn't even try to translate that. Entellado para reina.
Yeah.
I don't know what entellado is. Oh, I'm sorry, endotellado.
It was pretty blurry on my screen, so I tried a couple of things that I thought might be it, and I'm guessing that you also may have tried to fill in some letters there, and we just both failed because it was not quite legible.
If the D was a B and it was embotellado, it would mean bottling, but...
Okay, so bottled for a queen.
Yeah.
That could work. So yeah, it's basically queen wine. Rioja is a specific Spanish red wine, and Crianza is a subset of Rioja wine. That means it was aged at least 1 year in oak barrels. And 2016 means that it is... Well, we know it takes place 3 years after WandaVision.
And the end of WandaVision was at the tail end of 2023.
So we're
2026.
We're in 2026. Interesting.
Yeah. So this is a 10-year-old bottle of wine.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sharon is ready to drink up.
Oh man, is she ever. She is ready for wine. we don't know what'll happen. Something awful.
Something terrible.
But we got to do it anyway.
Yep.
And then
we have to follow the obvious breadcrumbs.
Yeah, this is definitely a moment of Agatha Agatha looking out for Agatha and kind of pushing everyone else to drink so that she can see what happens and then not doing so herself.
Yes. This is big I'm all about me energy.
Yeah.
Which is why Jen goes to warn Teen about Agatha, and we get so much in this conversation here.
Oh man, it's another brief but dense.
Yes.
Did you know she traded her own child for the Book of the Damned?
That is what people say. They say no one really knows what happened to him. They say he might be dead. Others say he might be a demon or an agent of Mephisto.
Cue Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme. Like Kurt is doing on my screen right now.
They said the thing! And the funny thing is that those three things that Jen says have all been true in the comics at one point or another. And then I doubt she'd even recognize her own son if she showed up on her doorstep.
Drink!
That at that point I was like, okay, I'm just all in on Teen being Nicholas.
Right.
Again, like I said before, doing Billy without Tommy at this point in their history,
it feels wrong.
Yeah. And so that and just all of this Nicholas Scratch mentions and discussions and just giant here.
Yeah,
I doubt she'd recognize her own son if he showed up at her doorstep.
There are so many things that's like, hey, remember in Beetlejuice when there was a great big sign with an arrow pointed directly at him that said Beetlejuice and it was flashing in big lights and everything? That's yes. What we've got here. So, yeah, and oh, man. We were so close. We were trying so hard to avoid any theories involving Mephisto. We were.
And then they had to go and say his name.
Yeah.
Which everyone on the internet was just like, they said the thing! They said the thing!
Yes, they were. They've been building up to that from WandaVision. It's been 3 years before they even said the name. But man,
although somebody pointed out that in the first Avengers movie, there is a book or something that they're looking at with Loki's staff, Loki's scepter in it, I think. And in the text of that book, Mephisto is mentioned. So it is not technically the first, but this is the first time it's said,
right,
and is made part of the canon, really. So anyways, Mephisto. I think we've talked a little bit about him in WandaVision, but he is basically the devil in Marvel Comics. He is always wanting to trade souls or some other ephemeral quality like love for getting your wish. Most infamously, he is the mechanism behind Spider-Man's secret identity being put back in the bottle.
Interesting.
In Civil War, Spider-Man went public when he was working for Tony Stark. He went in front of a news conference, took off his mask, says, "I am Peter Parker. I've been Spider-Man since I was 15 years old." After Civil War finished, Kingpin hired an assassin to go take out Peter Parker, and as collateral damage, shot Aunt May. And Peter was offered by Mephisto to have his secret identity put back and made secret again, and save Aunt May's life if he gave up his marriage to Mary Jane.
Wow.
And he did so. And Spider-Man fans around the world
cried out in panic.
Hated it. Absolutely hated it. For a number of reasons.
Oh, sure. That's understandable. What's funny about that deal is that really the only thing that Mephisto would have to do to collect would be tell Mary Jane about this deal, because she would not stand for Peter making that deal.
She told him to.
Oh, wow.
In the story, she says, do it.
Yeah, I can see the fans hating that.
Yeah. Since then, Peter Parker has been single again. It is something that the higher-ups, the editors, have wanted to take back for a long time. They want to make Spider-Man as young as possible, and having him be married, they feel ages him up too much.
Sure. I mean, that's kind of the same end result that they got in Spider-Man No Way Home. And he kind of made the same deal, but with Doctor Strange instead.
Yes, but the stakes were on a completely different level. It was, the universe is going to die. All the universes will collide, and reality as we know it will be gone if I don't do this now.
Yeah, but initially that wasn't the stakes.
No, but that was the stakes for making everyone forget.
True.
In the original spell, he wanted to let those close to him know who he was, and, you know, he would have been able to keep the relationship with Mary Jane in that case.
True.
The one that is closest to the comic book is the ending, where he says, okay, fine, everyone will forget me, even Mary Jane, who I love. Well, MJ,
right,
who I love. So, yeah, Mephisto's normally a Silver Surfer villain. He wants to corrupt the most pure soul out there, who he feels Silver Surfer is.
Okay.
So he's mostly seen in the cosmic side of Marvel, but will show up for anyone. Spider-Man, Hulk, Daredevil, he has been all over the Marvel Universe. Anyways, let's get back to the show, though.
Let's.
Because that was a one-word mention of Mephisto, so let's... It could still be a red herring. Let's move on from there.
Yes. So Sharon drinks up and drinks up and drinks up. Don't judge her. And
she's had a hard day.
And starts the 30-minute timer, which for those looking at the time in the episode, there's 26 minutes left, including credits.
Yeah.
I know
it's not a real-time timer, but that's totally fine.
Of course.
Considering all the cuts and everything that we see. And I love Teen asking for some, and everyone else says no, except for Agatha, who's like, you bet.
Of course, sure.
But he listens to the group and doesn't have any.
I don't know that he listens to the group in that case. I think the group overpowers it. They overrule his desire at that moment.
Fair enough.
And then Sharon is clearly already tipsy from the one glass, but she takes his portion. Empties the bottle into her own glass, and off she goes.
Let's hang out on the sofa for girl talk. And this is when Agatha pours hers out into the plant sitting nearby.
It would have been hilarious if the plant had turned into a llama, but...
Little Disney reference there. Yeah. The poison for Agatha. Agatha's poison. I will not do my Kronk impression because I don't have one.
Sure. They do specifically point us at the timer again before they end up on the couches so that everyone can drink, and a full minute has passed. So
okay,
Sharon has at least a minute on everyone else.
Mm-hmm. I didn't notice that one. I did notice other times the timer was focused on.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to point out the first conversation that happens when they sit down on the couch here, because Alice gets asked about her tattoo,
mm-hmm.
and she says she got it in Colorado. She mentions that her mom was playing in Red Rocks, but there's another town in the comics in Colorado, which is New Salem.
Oh, of course it is.
So I think they specifically chose Colorado as where she got that tattoo because that is the location of basically where witches live in Marvel Comics.
As opposed to within a 3-mile radius.
Right, yes. Good old Covenstead rule.
Yeah. So she had a challenging time and got this tattoo when she was 13.
Yeah.
And Teen responds cryptically.
Well, I think it was one of those 13 was rough on everybody sort of things.
Maybe. I suspect it was foreshadowy, though.
It might have been foreshadowy. I think it was more of a... We know for a fact that Teen is part of the LGBT community.
Right, because he got a call from Boyf.
Yes. And so 13 for someone in that group is typically more difficult than it is for a heterosexual.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because it didn't feel mysterious the way he said it. It was more of a matter of fact, yeah, 13 was rough on me too.
A lot happened to me at 13 too, is how he phrases it. So
yeah.
There's a lot of different directions it could be taken. We missed a line that happened very early in the episode that was more about him and his backstory, and since he is a major mystery of the show, it's worth pointing out. When Sharon was talking about this is a kidnapping, I gotta call the cops, somebody, I think it was Jen, said, and somebody should call his parents, to which he responds, I'm 100% positive they're asleep. Could be foster parents, could be.
Yeah, I mean, he's made reference to his parents before, at least his mom.
And later this episode, he'll refer to his dad.
Yeah. So, like I said in the previous episode, any references to his parents at this point, I assume, are going to end up being foster parents.
Which is a totally fair assumption, but since it is a deep dive, it's at least worth pointing out. Because he is mysterious, and any information about him is worth noting.
Very true. Very true.
And boy, oh boy, does Sharon need to stop it with the hyperbole when she's on the road. I would drink the blood of a virgin if it would smooth out some of these wrinkles.
Yeah, when she said that, and then her face does the thing that it does.
Right.
My first thought was that it looked like overdone plastic surgery.
It did. I was noticing that too. It was a specific style of swelling.
Mm-hmm. So my first thought was that it was just a wish gone wrong sort of thing. But no, Jen, after asking some questions and figuring some stuff out, that's just what that poison does. Is it makes your face swell up and then after a minute or two shrink back down to normal size.
Very quickly, yeah. I love Agatha's line. I think she looks fantastic.
Well, and Jen later is like, you look so pretty. I have some questions for you. And yeah, Jen definitely takes point on this one.
Right.
As the potions guy.
Right. Before we do, we did get another precog watch where we get the line, I love you guys. And it's very clear that's out of place and no one else understands where it came from, and it is not directly related to that moment.
Right. Either that or she's a lightweight when it comes to alcohol.
It is possible because the effects are well known. However, I don't think that's the case this time.
No, I don't think so either. But it feels like that's how they interpreted it.
Yeah.
When it happened. They were just like,
sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Louie.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for that. And
the fact that the face swelling disappears as fast as it does finally tells Jen which poison it is.
Which is Alewife's Revenge.
Yes.
Now, here's what I wrote down.
Okay.
Alewife is a type of herring. It's a fish. Fermenting alewife doesn't give you red wine. It gives you communism. Because communism, yeah, okay.
Is a red herring.
Yes. Had to get a clue reference in. I did find a few brewers online who do or did make a product called Alewife's Revenge, but that's it. Is there any specific comic-related thing with that phrase or poison?
Not that I found. Yeah, I also found beers that were named after that. Now, in addition to alewife being a fish, it also is an old term for like a barmaid.
Makes sense.
And so my thought was that kind of alewife. And so it's a poison that goes in alcohol that if one of your female customers is hanging out with your ale husband,
sure,
you're going to get revenge. Or yes, or if one of your male customers, because alewife is such an old term, I am going heteronormative on my description here, but
sure.
So yes, if one of your customers is too handsy with you or too handsy with your husband, then you have this option for getting revenge.
Right. And as soon as she describes these symptoms and all of the things that could happen, and she ends, of course, with what all drug commercials end with, of the possibilities of side effects or death, Agatha freaks out. And it's unclear to me why she does. She hasn't had any of the poison. Why does she suddenly have to get the hell out of here? And my theory is that these people are all here because of her, and she doesn't want to have the guilt involved with watching them die.
Okay, that's one reasonable interpretation. A more selfish interpretation is, I have to get out of here before they realize I'm not poisoned too.
What would that matter?
Well, because of of what happens later when they force her to drink the poison and join them.
Right. And again, we get a fantastic Sharon line just during that process when Agatha throws the glass on the floor and it shatters and there's wine everywhere. And Sharon says, "On the upholstery?"
If Sharon ends up getting her wish at the end of the road, I think it's going to be this house.
And the other thing that happens right here is that everyone else does try to get her to drink the poison. And Agatha absolutely refuses until Teen threatens to drink it.
Right. That is the one moment in here that felt unselfish and pointed towards her possibly knowing who Teen is.
Exactly.
But for the most part, she is so me. So do you think that's the true Agatha? Is that the moment that you were...
No. I was specifically talking about when Agatha was hallucinating about the...
Oh, okay. Right.
But yes.
Okay.
She is clearly protecting Teen for some reason. And that motivation could be any number of things. Is it protecting herself from more guilt? Is it because she knows who he is? Or is it just that she doesn't want to see a teenager die? Who knows at this point?
Or is it that she thinks if this guy is powerful enough to break me out of my spell, I can take that power?
Right. Oh, that's true. That could be a motivation too. Or even if he's this powerful, maybe he can save us, or at least me.
Right. There are options.
Yeah. And Sharon starts hallucinating and screams out, "Wanda, please let him breathe." And that was so heartbreaking.
Absolutely. Now, I don't remember her saying that in any episode of WandaVision, so my feeling was that was her internal monologue in episode 1.
Mine too. Her husband is choking. It's her actual husband, not just the show husband. And she is begging Wanda to let him breathe.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah, that one was rough. And then she collapses.
So those hallucinations are pretty chill.
Yeah.
And now it's time to brew an antidote with 15 minutes left because they focus on the timer.
2 seconds.
Yes. And they break off into teams. Teen and Alice head off to find frankincense and the gut of a eusocial insect. Why not just say honey, you complicated bitch?
Yeah, why so labyrinthine? They were not looking for the honey. They said we can help with that first one.
Okay, fair enough.
And the corpse that's been decaying for at least 30 million years. Wait, do I have to spell it out? Fine, zooplankton. Get some Vaseline.
Anything with petroleum products in it, which is everything.
Yeah.
Find anything plastic in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lily and Agatha go to get that. Meanwhile, Jen tries to find a big cauldron and says, "Hey, sink. That'll do."
Yeah, that should work. We get another precog watch moment. Try to save Agatha.
Yes. I referred to it in my notes as a magical Tourette's moment, but again, is she talking to someone? Is she repeating what somebody is going to say in the future? How does her precognition work exactly?
Unclear. I think it's that latter one, that second one. She's somebody will say try to save Agatha later.
Okay. But as part of this scene, they are in the bathroom because their first thought was get gas out of the car, and there's no car in the garage. So they head for petroleum jelly is their first thought. Well, second thought. And they find a bunch of Kale Care products in the bathroom.
Obvious breadcrumb.
And I love how Agatha immediately calls it out. She's like, No. This is not all natural.
No, I know a snake oil salesman when I see one.
Yep. And so they grab the skincare products.
Like, all of them.
Yeah.
Which is fair, because, I mean, it could be that she only used petroleum in one.
Exactly. Or one of the packages is made out of plastic and could be used, but the others are made out of hemp, and, who knows?
Yeah.
After that is when the witches start their hallucinations.
Yeah. Ooh,
Now, we could go in chronological order, but I think it makes more sense to just stick with one hallucination at a time, because they cut back and forth so much between them. Alice is the first one who starts her hallucination, so we might as well start with hers, where the sauna starts steaming up and she walks in, and it is suddenly her mom's dressing room. Now, I noted that Mom here is in the closing credits as one of the images we see in the whole montage of witchy images.
That makes sense.
So we finally meet her, and there's another woman in that closing credits that we haven't seen yet, but is a big obvious picture of a person, so I'm guessing she's going to show up later as well.
Sure.
But Alice is, at this moment, dealing with the fact that her mom is here.
And not all there.
No, because she says she felt Alice's grandmother die.
Thousands of miles away.
And now it's going to kill her.
Right.
We've gotten all the women in our family are cursed from the conversation with Teen earlier. And we do have a little bit from the comics where the Wu title is inherited upon death. When Alice Gulliver's mom died, the mom was the August Wu of the Coral Shore, and then Alice became the new Wu.
Yeah, you mentioned that last week. How did Alice's mom die in the comics?
I believe it was an attack of some sort.
Yeah, the relevant question there was it an attack by a them or an attack by an it?
By a demonic magical assailant.
So potentially an it.
Yes.
So yeah, clues into what happened to Mommy.
Yes.
It's so infuriating that Agatha phrases it that exact way every single time. God, can you infantilize her anymore?
Yeah, she is the youngest of the group.
Other than Teen, but yes.
But yeah. Well, of the coven.
Okay.
Because they specifically call out that Teen is not part of the coven multiple times. I find that interesting. Teen says at one point anyone can be a witch given proper training, but all the witches we have seen have been female.
Including in flashbacks, yeah, I noted that also, which is not an uncommon interpretation. The notion that, at the very least, the vast majority of witches in this world are female lends itself to it being a reasonable assumption or a reasonable conclusion that is come to that Teen is not a part of that.
Right. Is witch a female-only term, and there are male followers of the craft who are warlocks, but thus are not part of a coven? Is
it that the term witch has become more fluid with the advent of more non-binary people?
Yeah.
There's a lot of vagueness with the rules at this point, and I strongly suspect that Teen, when putting his arguments of things like, hey, anyone can be a witch if they just learn the craft enough, is specifically trying to get in on the club.
That's definitely possible. Now, we haven't quite finished up Alice's hallucination.
No.
Because Lorna, Alice's mom, screams out, "I can't protect you." And that's where it ends for her.
Yeah. And she understandably freaks out. And
yeah, these are incredibly disturbing. I assume for her, at least, that that's a memory.
Possibly. I think that Lilia gave us it wasn't a precog, it was a foreshadowing moment early in the episode when they asked, what are we going to be dealing with here? And she quoted the song and said, "Tame your fears."
Face your fears.
She said, "Face your fears." You're right. The song says, "Tame your fears." Tame your fears, a door appears, the time has come to go. Which I think that full couplet is very relevant to the end of the episode.
Yes. Although there's another couplet that I think will come into play as well. Speaking of Lilia, why don't we deal with her hallucination?
Oh, so creepy.
Yes. She sees an aristocratic young Italian woman. Now, I went to my costuming expert, Anne, who people will remember from the Loki episodes, and asked her if she could identify the time period and such. And she identified it as Renaissance, and she said, kind of Italian, kind of English. The skirts haven't been done correctly for either. But once I did confirm that Italian was the intention, she said that would put it at the mid to late 1500s. Enough time for the Spanish farthingale to have gotten to Italy, which is the hoop skirt that she is wearing. And she also said that the sleeves were totally correct for that time period and that location.
Interesting.
So we are looking at 1500s Italy for this woman's time and place. And yes, in Italian, she asks, "Do you want to see?" and walks away. And then Lilia follows her. And to me, this was the creepiest moment in the show.
I agree.
In the episode. With the old woman looking on the brink of death, sitting at a table, and then the literal personification of death showing up.
Yeah, I was grateful that they didn't linger on this.
Especially if you watched it right before going to bed.
Well, show comes out at 6 p.m. That's
yeah. Definitely near bedtime. Not necessarily at bedtime.
No, but in the range.
At night.
Yeah.
And then Lilia screams in Sicilian, which is different from Italian. It's a variation, but they do differentiate in the subtitles. They give subtitles for these lines, but then if you just always have subtitles on, they specifically say in the subtitles when the woman speaks earlier that it's in Italian, and then when Lilia speaks, they say in Sicilian. And Lilia screams, "They're dead. They're all dead."
Yeah. We'll be getting context for that later, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
All of these, really.
Yeah. The final one of the three that we get in concurrence with one another is Jen's hallucination.
Yeah, who the heck is this guy?
I don't know, but apparently he thinks Jen is an inconvenient woman. With the outfit and that kind of phrasing, to me, put it in 18th, early 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a complete guess on my part based on the very little bit of information we have.
Yeah, very aristocratic accent.
Mm-hmm. And then he tries to drown her in the sink/cauldron.
Right. Which thankfully doesn't have any ingredients in it yet other than water.
Right. Well, the ingredients that they add are nothing that's toxic at all. I mean,
true.
the first two ingredients she adds are honey and mustard, and
Right.
I'm like,
Eye of newt, also known as mustard seed.
Yes, it's something that probably those who aren't interested in the occult slash spooky things may not know is that if you actually look at the Eye of Newt, Tail of Frog, all of those things are just other names for different plants. Mm-hmm. They are not literally putting in a newt's eye into their potions. Everything that they use in those Shakespearean and other well-known mixtures, you're just getting flavored tea, basically.
Mm-hmm. Which is consistent with, I mean, if you're a townsperson in that era, you're not going to be taking potions from someone that have disgusting ingredients in it. You're going to be having the Starbucks health bomb and
well, that's true, but at the same time they also
leeches.
Yeah, exactly. That's right where it was going. They put leeches on people and said, that'll do it.
Well, you got to get the toxins out of the blood by getting rid of the blood.
And there are medicinal purposes for putting leeches on you, but they are very specific things that were not what they were being used for at that time.
Right.
So we've had our 3 hallucinations, and so they gather back together and discover the water reference on the front door, or at least one of them.
Salt water.
Yeah, the whole house is in the ocean now. And thanks to Agatha trying to get out earlier, it's already leaking.
Yes, and it's pretty clear that the road would have found a way.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that the water rushes in at the moment that it does later points to that fact.
In roughly 3 minutes and 13 seconds.
Yes. Yeah, the timer is running down. They have to add the ingredients in the right order and start doing so. It starts glowing pink first. And I love this moment where she's like, okay, how do we make it boil? And Teen comes up with the sous vide.
My dad loves his.
Yes. Another reference to parents. There are definitely people who are all in on the sous vide.
Sure.
One of the YouTube channels I follow is sous vide everything.
Because of course, why wouldn't there be?
So yeah, the using of modern tools for witchcraft, I find a fun, not quite dichotomy, but
it feels a little anachronistic, but it isn't, because of course modern witches would use modern tools.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason why you wouldn't. And now each of them needs to pull out a hair at this point and add it to the potion. But unfortunately, Agatha finally starts her hallucination since she was a few minutes behind the group.
Right. And hers is creepy, but I don't know that it necessarily justifies the reaction she has.
Well, potentially. So let's talk about the literal events of it and then what interpretations there are.
Mm-hmm.
We hear a crying baby. Agatha sees a bassinet. She pulls back the blanket and there's the Darkhold.
And she screams.
Now, this certainly points to Jen's warning about her and what everyone says about her being true.
Well, an interpretation of it, yes. To me, it points more towards that being the story, but the actual truth being she had a lot less choice in it than the other witches believe. because all of these are about the witch's fears and bad memories and things that are going to cause that kind of screaming reaction. I don't know if she made that trade willingly, if she made that trade.
I think she definitely made that trade.
I do too. They wouldn't have given us that story earlier if it wasn't going to pan out.
Right, yeah. And especially with this hallucination, it is like the Darkhold is now your baby.
Right.
Again, it depends on how you view Agatha and where you think her morality lies. Is she the kind of person who would willingly trade her child for power? Or is she the kind of person who would seek out power and then accidentally be stuck into that bargain?
I suspect it's closer to that second one. All we know from that scene in the penultimate episode of WandaVision where the coven is trying to kill her is that she sought out power that was above her knowledge and station. That's
right.
And she got power too early, so they are going to kill her. And it's unclear if that power was the Darkhold or what, if that happened later, or all of these things are question marks.
True.
And later her attitude is, I take power from the unworthy. That's kind of my thing. So I don't know how all of this fits in yet.
Right. Mysteries abound.
Yeah, but it's very clearly hugely significant.
Oh, absolutely. But she comes out of her hallucination, denies seeing anything, of course, and puts in her hair, but the water still isn't the right color yet. Now, I don't know why, but my brain keeps thinking that chartreuse is a red shade. But no, apparently chartreuse is green, cerulean is blue, I knew that. And so it's currently glowing chartreuse.
Right. It's kind of an aqua, maybe?
Yeah, maybe bluish green, greenish blue. It's missing something. And Jen gets all frustrated because she could have done this with just a wave of her hand at one point.
And the line she specifically says is, I'm bound, he stole my magic.
Yes. I assume he is the man we saw in her hallucination.
That is an absolute possibility. It could be any number of other things. For all we know, it could have been Mephisto. Because we're back to bringing in theories about him.
Yeah. It could have been Nicholas Scratch. It could have been...
Sure.
We have options. And I love Agatha's pep talk here that starts with, I've always hated you. Mm-hmm. Good pep talk.
Yeah.
But it works. You know, she says, you're doing the important work. They may have taken your power, but they can't take your knowledge.
Now, I'm very curious what she's referring to when she says your work was too important. What kind of important work, the real stuff, not this beauty line crap, was she doing? We may or may not get an answer to that one.
True.
Because I don't know that answer is relevant to this storyline, but it is something that I'm curious about.
Yeah. Of all the witches, Jen is the only one that Agatha seems to have known before this story. Mm-hmm. So it feels like we should get more explanation of what happened between the two of them.
But I agree with you, and that could be left for season 2.
Absolutely. Or just implied, and we don't need to give you all the details.
Right.
But yeah, the pep talk does finally work, and Jen's like, oh yeah, we need somebody who's been unpoisoned and need their blood.
How much? It doesn't matter. Grab knife.
And once again, don't cut the plum. Now, at least in this case, it's Agatha doing it to someone else rather than someone doing it to themselves. So Agatha's selfish and at least to a certain extent, and so isn't going to care so much about pain. But god damn it, people, when you need blood for a spell, prick your finger, cut the upper side of your hand, cut anywhere but the palm.
Less nerve endings.
Someplace with less nerve endings that you aren't constantly moving and stretching around so that it won't heal.
Yeah.
So anyways, that is my
PSA for the day.
Yes, I will climb off of my soapbox for now and point out that the potion now does glow blue. They all drink for themselves, but the timer is still going because Sharon. And they force it down Sharon's throat after they kind of pass it down the line. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that the timer had gone off before they did so.
I noticed that as well. But it still opens the oven.
It does open the oven, and the water starts pouring in. Mm-hmm. So, despite Lilia not wanting to follow Hansel and Gretel's witch
story, I love that line so much. I am not climbing in an oven. That happened to a friend of mine once. She had a lovely house, too. She ended up...
So, yeah, despite not wanting to go in the oven, that's the only way out. So they head out that direction, taking Sharon with them.
Go down the Goonies slide.
Yes. we made the same note in our...
And back to original Goonies costumes.
Yes, back to their original costumes and back on the road.
Yes.
But unfortunately, Sharon did not make it.
Now, there are so many possibilities here that I'm sure we will get some kind of explanation for. But did Sharon die because she had a second glass of wine? Did she die because they didn't get her the antidote in time? Or was she final destinationed because of the couplet, I stray not from the path, I hold death's hand in mine?
My interpretation was that they didn't get it to her in time.
Mine too, but I think any one of those is valid.
And I think there's another couplet that is more important to this moment and the upcoming episodes. If one be gone, we carry on, spirit as our guide.
I noted that also, except if you go back to when they are singing it, that line is different. They sing, if sun be gone. S-U-N. So I think that the way that, and I found the lyrics in two different sites, they both said, if one be gone. I think that's more valid for what you're saying here, and I agree that kind of
and if you listen to the if you go to a YouTube channel and listen to the sacred chant version, it is if one be gone.
You mean the one that was sung at D23 or the one that was in the episode?
It seems like the one that is in the episode,
because I went back to the episode and I was listening and watching the subtitles, and that version says sun.
But the one that was released as like a music video sort of thing is if one.
Interesting. Either way, relevant quote.
Yes. So my feeling is that we will be getting Sharon back as a spirit guide.
Oh God, that'll be great.
Yeah, Ghost Sharon will be so much fun if she shows up.
What I wrote down just before so they're giving her the antidote and they are shoving her in the oven, trying to carry for someone so little. Why is she so heavy? I wrote down, I'm going to be saying poor Sharon a lot, aren't I? And then we get the very next scene and I wrote down, guess not.
Apparently not. Again, I think Sharon will return in some sort of spirit form, Maybe not for the whole rest of the series, but at least at some sort of conclusion.
I think that's valid. She's too good a character, and that is too rough a demise for someone that has been the audience analog for this kind of a show.
And it's just too mean to kill her off and have the very last discussion of her be, who's Sharon?
Yeah. Well, Agatha thinks of her as Mrs. Hart, even though her name isn't even Hart.
No, and the rest of the crew the entire time kept referring to her as Mrs. Hart as well, and she kept correcting them. Sharon.
Which I find very strange because, again, she knows her last name. She knows that her last name isn't Hart. Why is that the part that's...
She does say Sharon Davis sometimes, but she's correcting them on what she wants to be called.
Yeah.
They're getting her name wrong, but to her the important part is, call me Sharon. My name is Sharon Davis. Please call me Sharon. And so that's what she's emphasizing, rather than, not Mrs. Hart, Mrs. Davis. Because she doesn't want to be called Mrs. Davis.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's certainly how she is written. I just know that if it was me, it would be, look, first off, it's Mrs. Davis, but call me Sharon.
Okay.
I mean, if you're getting it completely wrong, I would correct both parts.
And like I said, she does sometimes.
She does correct Agatha in the previous episode, but as far as I could find, that was the only time she did it.
I think once in this episode she does say Sharon Davis.
Huh. Maybe.
Sometime during the wine talk.
It's entirely possible. She was quite wined.
And she was quite verbose when she was wined.
Yes. But yeah, her last line being, Wanda, please let him breathe. Ugh.
Oof. Ugh. Yeah, I hadn't put that together, but damn, that's rough.
Yeah.
That is not a good way to die. A couple of women in this episode are like, I don't want to die this way.
Yeah. As opposed to Sharon, who says, bury me in that kitchen.
Yeah, but that's not where she's getting... They don't. That would have been a good line from Agatha for why they should leave her behind. Like, she said she wanted to be buried in the kitchen. Let's let her. And that's it. That's our ending, with everyone looking at Agatha like, you heartless, cruel person, not knowing who Sharon is.
Right.
And then immediate cut to the ending credits, where we hear the song Heads Will Roll by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
Which worked.
Yes, absolutely.
As with WandaVision, they've been doing very well with their music selection.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that episode 1 had a specific pop culture song, episode 2 did not, and then back to episode 3, they do that again. So it'll be interesting to see which episodes they choose to add a needle drop to.
Right.
And which ones they don't.
Yeah. And again, I was looking in the ending credits for a reference to the episode and missed it, but you caught that her mother was represented in there.
Yeah. And then, like I said, there's another woman in there that feels like an actress, feels like a person that we will see. It feels like a professional photograph that has been photoshopped to be aged rather than an actual old photograph.
Right.
And so I'm guessing we're going to see this person as well. And how they fit into the story, we'll have to wait for a later episode. And we will be talking about all those later episodes as they come out. In the meantime, if you want to share your thoughts on the episodes we've discussed, you can email those, or topics you'd like to hear about on future scripted episodes, to welcometogeektown@gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcometogeektown.com. the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome to Geektown, Twitter at Geektown Podcast, Mastodon at Welcome to Geektown at mastodon.social, or Blue Sky at welcome2geektown.bluesky.social. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them,
Welcome to Geektown. Population, us.
Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.